it is time. The free-to-play 5 teams stage 300 Temporal Rift guide, the follow-up that everyone's been asking for. My last Temporal Rift guide was at stage 100, showing you my teams I used to clear that stage. Now the situation has changed and we need to reach stage 300, and to do that I will be showing you guys my teams. I will be showing you guys the best possible guide you could find on Temporal Rift for every account, not just free-to-play players. And then I will also be showing you guys strategies for progressing in the Temporal Rift. But let's start off with my teams. Now, disclaimer. As you can see when I press this button, I'm not at stage 300. I'm sorry, but I ran out of rewinds, and I am fairly certain I'm able to beat this stage and go kill the boss next week. So, sure, you can call me a fraud because I'm missing one stage, but instead of that, this is actually kind of an improvement because I saved my last attack so I could show you guys the teams that I have been using to progress through the Rift, right? So these are my teams. Stay tuned for other teams later in the video. So, the first team, the Dimensional team, the Rem team. Now, as you can see here, I'm using the Albedo, right, with Dimensionals and then the Fire Breather pet. And for the armor, I'm using the Boulder armor, which gives you extra power whenever you get a shield, which is significant because both Merlin and Yorn grants a shield. The main carry in this round is Rem. Rem is what gets it done. The other units are pretty interchangeable. I would say that the core is Rem plus these 3 heroes, and then whatever strong dimensional you have here. I could probably use Leonardo as well. As for Ainz, I've seen him work. However, I'm pretty sure Rem is just better than Ainz in every single formation you can imagine. So use Rem for the Dimensional team. The next team. Alright, here I did some playing around on my last attack, but this is how it looks. This team is probably my weakest team. It's the Taline cycle team, right? The guard comp if you played back in the days. Now, caveats to this. My Taline is not strong, as you can see. No furniture, 20 signature items, 30 engraving. A very low investment on Taline. Very important for me to make this work is that I use the Rock Lizard at level 9, so to make sure this team doesn't get completely one-shot at the start of battle. The second this team lives, it wins against anything. The problem is getting it to live. As for the relic or the badge, I'm using the Axe of Fury because it basically it just amplifies the cycle that this team uses to log out the enemy team with both CC and not being able to ult with SCs, and then Taline spam healing the entire team. Definitely use the Axe of Fury in this team and use this pet. Next team, boom. This is the team, right? Because most people, I should have said that before, I have 2 Awakened Heroes. I have Solise and I have Belinda. So I need to make 3 teams that don't contain Awakened Heroes. And that's where the hard part comes in. But I'll show you guys the guide that I used to make these teams. Now, as you look at this team, this is the usual setup. I played around with it a bit. And this is usually how it looks. The main thing about this team is it's incredibly hard to kill with Emilia and with Gress and with Olna, and then you utilize the seal and all the CC and the energy drain and the healing to kill them out with the seal. As for the badge here, I'm using the Cloud Tempest. Basically it adds more damage, which this team doesn't really have. But this is one of the most interchangeable badges. You could probably use pretty much anything. The main carry in this team is the seal. My seal is level 12. I just got it to level 12, so I know it works at least level 11 as well, but I would imagine lower investment, probably also. Maybe not at 6, I'm not sure when the seal actually does damage, but for me level 11 worked, and level 12 obviously worked as well. So this is another team. So, as you can tell from my 3 teams so far, no Awakened Heroes yet. Here we go, here's an Awakened Hero, guys. They were coming, we all knew they were coming, but to what extent? So for me, I have Belinda built, which means I use the Belinda team comp. Usually, you would want to use Olna with Belinda to make the strongest comp imaginable that pretty much can't lose. For me, I need Olna in this team, and that's why I'm using basically just the full support, and I'm praying to God Belinda doesn't get one shot. And usually she doesn't get one shot, and she one shots the entire enemy team. As for the pet, I'm using the winged lion. I would love to use the rock lizard, but that is locked up in my first team. And as for the badge, for Belinda, you can use anything. You can use the shield badge, or you can use anything else, right? For me, Belinda, like, her badge to me didn't matter as much. It's more this team that was pretty badge dependent. This team was badge dependent. And for Belinda, I'm just using whatever's left over pretty much. So, pretty self-explanatory. Belinda carries everything. If Belinda dies, you lose. If Belinda lives, you win. I would say this team has like an 80% win rate against most teams. Alright, last team, the Wilder team. This is where my second Awakened Hero comes in, because I have Awakened Solise built. For this team, I don't know, I think it's because I swapped them around, but usually I'm using this one, the Ring of Domination, because it gets extra damage and scales on summoned units, which Solise does, and also Nevi with her 60 engraving, which I have, buffs summoners, also Mishka of course, so they do more damage and get more haste and stuff. As for the pet, I'm using the owl at level 11. I don't think there's a requirement level for the owl. It works at pretty much any investments, and it's basically because Tamara groups them up, and then Astar and Mishka and whoever smothers them to death. And this team, I would say, has like a 95% win rate. It is very rare for this team to lose. So those are my 5 teams, right? Okay, so now you've looked at my 5 teams, and maybe you're wondering, that's not really the heroes that I have built. I don't have, maybe I don't have Tamara's built. Maybe I don't have, Awakened Belinda built. But maybe I have Brutus built. What do? Don't worry, I've got you. And by I've got you, I mean someone else has got you. But I can show you what he has done. So, as we leave my teams and go to the browser, we arrive here. This is it, guys. This is the bread and butter of Temporal Rift pushing. Shoutouts goes to Ferrara, not sure about the pronunciation. However, this guy's the GOAT. This guy, you should just shout out this guy. And I'm shouting out this guy because this is the GOAT. He is gathering all the information of different heroes that has cleared the different stages, and then compiling them into this great document that I will also link in the description. Now, let me give you an overview. So, as you can see, he has some step-by-step guide, but I'll just tell you the most important thing. As you can see down here at the bottom, he has different tabs for different comps, which means, as I told you earlier, maybe you don't have Belinda built, but maybe you have Brutus built. Alright, what are some Brutus comps? Boom, baby. Here we are, Brutus comps. How many Brutus comps? Yes, all the Brutus comps. So you would go through here and you would find a Brutus comp that doesn't have conflict with other comps as to what heroes it's using. So maybe these dimensional Brutus comps are probably not it, right? But then you look at this comp, right, with Mulan. That's an interesting Brutus comp. I could probably build that without taking heroes from the different comps. Now, one thing I should say before we go over this is this isn't completely updated to floor 300, but teams that beat floor 280 are likely good teams. That means they will also beat floor 300. The only thing holding them back is probably the badge levels. Real quick before I go further, I just wanted you guys to see my badges. So basically, whenever you can level this, you level this. And everything you have left over goes into, for me, the Fearsome Alliance and the Lightning Duel, which is by far the best stamina reduction one. But as soon as I can refund these two to get another level on this one, I will do that, because stats is the most important part. Alright, that's just a quick caveat. Back to the guide. Alright, these are teams that work. TLDR, these are teams that work. So, as a free-to-play player, what you're interested in is how many Awakened Heroes have you built? Then you can use, the different Awakened Hero comp, right? Maybe you have Solise, maybe you have Baden, maybe you have Thane, maybe you have Matria, probably not. Maybe you have Awakened Athalia, right? And then the most important part is you want to look at the non-awakened or dimensional teams. This is where my comp, this is the exact comp that I'm using, right? This is my comp. It got me to floor 299 so far, probably clearing the entire Temporal Rift using this comp. It's weak, I'd admit it's weak, but it doesn't conflict with any other comps. But as you can see when I scroll down here, there are lots of non-awakened, non-dimensional comps that you could pick and choose from. Interestingly enough, you have a Peggy here, a Peggy comp. So maybe you guys have Peggy built. You can do that. Probably not though. So you would pick a comp here. If you're lucky, you can maybe even make 2 comps here, right? Because there's like a Graveborn variant and there's a Wilder variant. So maybe you could make 2 comps from here. Then you have 2 teams or 1 team. You go to dimensionals. This is where you make 1 team. You make the Emilia team or the Rem Emilia team, right? And also maybe even the Ainz team, right? Sometimes it's possible to split up your dimensionals into 2 teams, but it does split thin. For me, the way I did it is I made this team right here. This is the exact team that I used, using Emilia with Graveborns and Ulna and the Seal Pad. This is a great team, I think. As long as you don't get one shot, this team will probably out-sustain most things. And then, in combination with that, I'm using a standard dimensional comp, as you saw, right? Where I just throw in 5-dimensional heroes with Albedo and Rem, and that clears most stages, right? So, in here, you have 1 team, dimensional team, then you also have a non-awakened team. So that's 2 teams. If you make this team, and you sacrifice Ulna from your Belinda comp, now you have 3 teams, right? 1, 2 with Rem, 3 with this. And then it comes down to how many awakened heroes you have built. So for Belinda, pretty self-explanatory. Belinda wants to be built. Early on the Rift, she worked at Legendary. I am not sure she does that anymore. However, if you guys are progressing with Legendary Belinda, I would really like to know it, so I could recommend that for the future. But if not, then obviously you wouldn't look at this if you don't have Belinda. For Solise, here's another hero that potentially could work at Legendary, right? For me, early on in the Rift, I definitely used Solise at Legendary in the earlier versions of the Rift because she worked wonders at just Legendary. However, maybe she needs to be built out. It's hard to say because I built out my Solise before this Rift, so I haven't had any testing. But as you can see, so many different Solise comps here. Pretty much you make a Wilder comp. Like that's kind of the essence of it. But obviously you can use Solise in the Graveborn comp as well. Then you look at Brutus. Now Brutus is one of the heroes that, like, he has a tendency to grab heroes from different formations and pull them into his own comp. For example, as you can see here, he really likes Merlin, and Merlin also likes being in the dimensional comp. Same thing with John, same thing with these Wilders. Same thing here, right? He just slots into the dimensional comp. That's not very attractive for you guys because then you can't build the dimensional comp. So you're looking for Brutus comps, like maybe this one, right? That doesn't have issues with the other comps that you're using. So, you know, there's a lot of different variations. You're gonna have to mix and match by yourself following this document. But here are the teams that works, right? Now we go look at Baden. Now Baden is a unit I haven't even looked for comps with him because for me, you know, I don't have Baden and I don't think I'm building Baden, so I haven't looked at these comps. But the way it looks like is like it's a little bit like Brutus, right? Where he can slot into the dimensional comp, or he can steal the Wilder hero supports or the Cycle hero supports. This is pretty interesting, right? Here he just uses Ainz and some supports and Vithil. That's actually a pretty good comp that doesn't run into issues grabbing heroes from other comps. And then obviously just finishing it off, we have Thane, right? Thane also strong in the Temporal Rift like most other Awakened heroes. A bit less strong at high deficits, like he can definitely run into comps he can't kill. But if you have a built out Thane, he would work, right? Again, these comps have cleared high. Matria, not a lot of comps here, and as you can see, most of the comps she's put into the dimensional comp, right? So that's not very attractive. Awaken the Thalia, kind of in the boat with Thane, right? Where she is a great, no, not Thane, Matria. She's a great slot in most comps, right? But she doesn't really make her own comp. As you can see, there's kind of a comp here, but it uses dimensional heroes. And then obviously, you know, if you're just at this point, if you're here in the video and you can build some of these comps using multiple awakened heroes, then I would hope you're not struggling with floor 300. For Taline, just 2 comps. For Solise, shout out to the boys who build Solise, obviously not a comp with him. So here's the overview, right? The TLDR is you want to make as many comps as you can from this. Ideally, through dims and through dimensional and non-awakened and dims, you would want to try to build 3 teams so that you can use your awakened heroes to finish the last 2 teams. But obviously, if you have 3 awakened heroes built, then it's a non-issue, hopefully. Right, so that, now I've gone over like, okay, here we have the comps that you can use. Here are the comps that can beat the Temporal Rift, right? I talked with Farada and he will update this later on this week after reset, right? But obviously the comp that work now should work in the future, right? It's all up to badge levels. So, another important part of the Rift that not a lot of people are talking about, right? People ask me, what heroes are you using? What heroes are you using? What badges are you using? Where do I allocate my points? That is important, yes. Another thing that's incredibly important is the badges and the divine seals. The divine seals, very important. And shout out to Bob49, right? Also a avid guide maker in the community, right? He's kind of a goat as well. He has made a badge and divine seals tier list based on his personal experience, and I have been following this, and I can definitely agree that if you can get the Sworn to Death one, this one, that's just best in slot. It doesn't matter what rank, because it's a cheat death that can deny many deaths on your team. It's by far the strongest one. But when you pick your seal, basically what I did is I just had, whenever I did my Rift attempts, I just had this open. It's sorted, you know, by best to worst or just by good, right? These are all good, and I just picked whatever I could find that's in here, right? It didn't matter if I had like a legendary bad one or a green this one, right? I would always just pick one of these if I could. And whenever I had upgrades, right? He also goes over this later on in this guide. If you have, maybe you have a green one of these and you get offered a golden one, that's probably worth. But if it's purple to golden, that might not be worth, and you just want to upgrade your badge instead. But yeah, this is a very, very important information, this, because yes, you can build the teams and have the correct badges and the correct pets and so on, but if you're struggling with the mechanics of the Rift, that also matters. And one of the main mechanics that also improves your teams is picking your divine seals. Another thing that I think I should talk about, but I don't really have anything to visualize it, I guess we could go back into the game, is what do you do for stages? One thing that's very important is, if I just exit here, exit, oh wait, I had 4 rewinds left. Oh, maybe I can get to 300 later today. Here, memory rewind. Save your good attempts. If you're gonna exit, right, one of these, you can save them. Wait, what? Where? There, save, right? So, for example, I have here floor 299 3 hours ago at 280 stability. I will want to save that so I can try from that point again. I forgot to do it this time around, but you know, you would want to save your progressions every stage that you quit, because then you could try out from different points. For example, I would love to have saved my 98, so maybe I could pick a different stage at 98 and then avoid some of the harder stages at 99. Obvious guides or obvious tips for the Temporal Rift is you always pick floors due. You always pick the twins one where you get offered different choices for buffs. There's the Mihira one where you can get like a positive and negative buff. You can pick that one and then don't pick the buff, and then you skip a stage. That's pretty important when like basically you want to pick the path of least resistance, because you want to avoid fighting to save stability. And if you're lucky, you can. I've seen people chaining like 9 stages in a row. I think my record is 7, where I just got non-fighting stages back to back to back. There's also the one where you can pick a hero to join your roster, right? Everything where you don't have to fight but you progress a floor is what you want to pick. So, I think that is it for the Temporal Rift. To sum it up, you could go back in the video, you can look at my teams if you want to do that. What I would more recommend is that you look in the description of my video and you go look at these two guys. I'll link both of them. Mainly you look at this, and you're gonna have to do some theory crafting if you can't copy my teams, right? You wanna make 5 teams. Go through here, make 1 team, go through here, make 1 team. Through these 2, maybe you can make a second. I recommend this team because it doesn't really conflict with the dimensional, and it doesn't really conflict with the non-awakened dimensional teams. Then you wanna look at your awakened heroes. You wanna go through here. What awakened heroes do I have built? What teams can I make? Hopefully that gets you to 3 teams. And also another thing, if you're newer to the game, you should not expect clearing the rift if you're a new account, because you don't have any heroes. For the old Temporal Rift, only one of them there was only one of them where I was able to get to stage 800, I believe the max was. That was like the very latest rift, because my account was just not progressed enough, right? So this is also kind of like a benchmark to build towards as a newer player, because you would want to get as much out of the Temporal Rift as possible, because the resources in there are truly great, right? And that's why you're looking at this guide, because you look at the resources in the Temporal Rift and you really want to secure those for yourself. All right, I really hope I didn't miss anything. If I did, feel free to ask me something in the description. I'll read every comment as I usually do, and I'll answer whatever I can based on my knowledge. Shoutouts goes to Ferrara for putting together this, right? Basically, he's going through the crowdsourcing Discord server and he's looking at all the different screenshots and variations that people use, and then he's throwing it into this Google document. As you can see, people are viewing this, right? And then shout out to Bob49 for the Divine Seal tier list, and then the overall, like, he has a guide, right, a written guide with different tips and different tricks, right? It's slightly outdated, but it's definitely a good guide. And also Bob is one of those guys. He I saw this earlier, he has cleared floor 300 as a free-to-play-ish friendly account. Right, that's it for my video. I hope this helps you guys clear the Temporal Rift and get the juicy rewards.